Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. It's great to have you with us today. Thanks so much for joining us on this beautiful night in America. It's even more beautiful that Donald J. Trump is our president once again. The illegal immigration situation in this country has been in decline since January 20th, and that's only to the thanks of Donald J. Trump. But border czar Tom Homan, perhaps one of the hardest working men in Washington, D.C. or in the administration, says he's not happy to completely restore and keep to President Trump's mass deportation campaign promise. We need to increase the arrests. They're just not high enough. The last number we had known was about 1,000 a day. President Trump has requested more funding from Congress for these mass deportations as the border wall continues to be built. That's right. The border wall is starting to be built again under this administration. The New York Times, who is no friend of America, no friend of the MAGA movement, no friend of anybody, may soon be getting back in the business of journalism. Cartels. That's right. The New York Times has taken on the cartels, meeting with them this week with this latest piece that they have out in their tabloid, we'll call it today. Trump's threat and Mexico's crackdown hit Mexican cartels. Several cartel operatives said for the first time in years they are genuinely feared, arrested, or death at the hands of authorities. Not a bad headline. We go on then. One cartel leader says he's trying to figure out how to protect his family in case the American military strikes inside of Mexico, which is a plan that had been reportedly floated in this administration. Another says he's already gone into hiding, rarely leaving his home. Two young men who produce fentanyl for their cartel say they've shut down their drug labs altogether. Interesting. The cartels are running terrified. We go a little bit further down into this piece from the New York Times. And this cartel member says the most important thing now is to survive, as his hands were trembling. They should be trembling, and you should be terrified, you cartel members who have been importing drugs into this country and taking the lives of innocent Americans by the hundreds of thousands a year. You should be scared because Donald Trump, Tom Homan, and the administration is coming for you, dead or alive. There's no hyperbole about it. It's happening now, each and every day. As we watch this administration take aim and this administration get to work with everything that they're doing. Hats off to President Trump, Tom Homan, Kristi Noem. They're doing a hell of a job. President Trump also announcing today he will be releasing a report on the assassination attempts against his life, which is great. We should know what happened. We should know who was involved. If there are more than one person involved in each of the instances, the one in Florida on the golf course, and the other one that clipped his ear in Butler, Pennsylvania. We do need to know who was involved. Was the deep state involved? Were these lone actors? It's Americans' right to know what exactly went on that day. I want to bring in our guest today. He's a brilliant man. A man who's written many books. Stenographer for many presidents, George W. Bush, President Obama, and Joe Biden as vice president, and for President Trump for a year in office. His name is Mike McCormick. He's got an all-new book out laying out the Catholic Church's role in everything that's going on, from immigration to pedophilia to the Wuhan pandemic. Mike, it's great to have you with us here on the Great America Show. I hear you've got a new book out. As a matter of fact, I went out to my mailbox the other day and I saw this sitting in there for me. The book is An Insurmountable Evil: How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Plandemic. Folks, you can get a copy of Mike's book today, wherever you guys get your books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, I guess Bombardier Books. If you go to their website directly, you can get a copy of Mike's book. We recommend it to you highly. I've read every single book Mike has sent me, and I'm a little bit through this new one. So, Mike, let's get to the first question that I have for you. And what is it? You've been onto the Biden crime family for a very long time, working for many presidents, 4 presidents, in fact. 5 years with Bush the second, George W. Bush. Obama for 6 years, blended in with Biden as vice president, and Trump for 1 year as a stenographer. So you were firsthand account to a lot of meetings, some probably on the record, some probably very off the record.
Always with the press. So whatever the press were interacting with the president, I was there. Sometimes international travel too.
So let's get to this latest book, An Insurmountable Evil. what possessed you to dig into the latest topic now against the Biden crime family and Obama?
You know, there's a book I didn't want to write. I didn't want to think this was going on. But what happened was about a year ago, I was listening to Alex Jones on his show talking about this feeling of overwhelming evil. And it really struck me. He was very emotional about it. And I was like, I wonder I thought to myself, what's the most evil thing that I experienced at the White House? And it was Joe Biden's very close relationship with Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, who was a very evil man in the Catholic Church. And so I went to White House visitor logs in the Obama website, and that's where McCarrick, and I typed in McCarrick, and what came up was shocking. And because I had done all that research into the Biden crime family, I understood exactly what I was looking at. These meetings that he had, and most of them with White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough, who was working for both Biden and Obama. And he was kind of a Biden operative. So this was a real Joe Biden operation, this maneuvering of McCarrick. And basically what they did was they used McCarrick to influence cardinals in the Vatican in 2013 to help elect Pope Francis. Then it was Cardinal Bergoglio from Argentina to get him elected. And then from then on, Bergoglio or Pope Francis became like the foreign policy tool of the Obama-Biden people.
Right. So the relationship started with Obama or with Biden with McCarrick?
McCarrick was a long-time Washington guy. He predated Obama. Although Obama, it comes out in the book, got his start through the Catholic Church in Chicago in like the 1990s. That's where they were the ones that first sponsored him for his community activist work on the Chicago South Side. So he had a long association with the Catholic Church. But Biden, as a Catholic and a high-profile Washingtonian, let's say it like that, and a high-profile Washingtonian, he knew McCarrick for a long time. McCarrick was the Bishop of Washington. He was named Cardinal in 2000. And he was front and center at like every March 17th, St. Patrick's Day celebration in the House and the Senate. So Biden was always there. And when I was working for Joe Biden, he was always at the Naval Observatory. Joe Biden would always yell out, "Hey, there's Cardinal McCarrick in the back. Hey, Cardinal." And, he became sort of his spiritual advisor. Well, this is a spiritual advisor who's an evil man. So I had to look into this, and this is what we got to.
How many so he starts visiting the White House now. Now I want to share with the audience, if they can see here, a timeline of who McCarrick was and what he's done and what he's been capable of doing. In 1971, okay, so this is going back now a very long time, is when McCarrick was first accused of sexual misconduct inside the Catholic Church, apparently assaulting a 16-year-old altar boy at a cathedral prep seminary in Manhattan, New York. Okay, now this goes on and on. I'm not going to make the audience sit here as we go through this, but as we go on, this man, Theodore McCarrick, climbed the ladder and climbed the ladder and climbed the ladder some more. 1977, Pope Paul appointed McCarrick auxiliary bishop of the Archdiocese in New York. Okay, now this is 7 years after the first accusation. They continued to come. He then went to be on the Bishop of Metuchen, New Jersey. Then he was appointed the Archbishop of Newark, continuing to climb the ladder all the way up into the 2000s, 2001. You had mentioned Washington, D.C., appointed Archbishop of Washington, where he remained until 2006, so 5 years there. This is now over 30 years after the first accusation against him, okay? 2001, he was elevated to the College of Cardinals, which is no joke for the Catholic Church. I think that puts you in line to be a pope. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And this made him a serious player in the Washington power structure. There are a lot of Catholic politicians, but also a lot of Catholic media. So he was always whining and dining and glad handing his way around the city.
So now we fast forward to 2002. McCarrick announced the Vatican's new policy on sexual abuse by priests in Rome. In doing so, McCarrick outlined a multi-step process in which accused priests would be put on, quote, administrative leave, which in most jobs, that's a paid leave. Outlined this multi-step administrative leave, removed from the clergy's duties while the case was being investigated. Now, this is 32 years post first accusation, and this man is in charge of the policy for sexual misconduct. Right. So explain to me now how he moves his way up the list, the ladder, makes his way into the White House. What was he doing with Obama? What was he doing with Biden? What were they working on?
Well, so the big connection between Obama, Biden, and McCarrick was Dennis McDonough, who was at the time working for Thomas Donnellan. Donnellan was a national security advisor. He's also a Catholic. McDonough is a Catholic. McDonough was one of his assistant national security advisors. He reached out in an email shortly after Obama was elected in 2008 and said, we want to get in touch with the Vatican. We want to connect with the Vatican. So this is McDonough taking it upon himself to do this, probably at Joe Biden's encouragement. Joe Biden used to talk about McDonough as being one of his operative guys. Tom Donnellan definitely was one of his operatives. So they start moving up the ladder, and McDonough is the guy. He's meeting with McCarrick regularly. At the time, Pope Benedict was a conservative, and he was kind of standing in front of what the Obama people wanted out of their policy. They wanted, a lot of liberal stuff done. Well, he would, from the Vatican, kind of, put the kibosh on it. Well, they got rid of him, I think. And personally, I look back at McCarrick's background. I think he was a CIA operative. He was brought in. He went through seminary in New York early. Then he came down and went to Catholic University and studied there in the early 60s. And if he was met by intelligence community people and it became known to them that he liked having sex with men, that would have been interesting to them at the time. He also learned how to do fundraising. That was his special skill. He was a fundraising guy.
McCarrick, you're saying?
McCarrick. So throughout his career, that was his big influence builder. He would go around and pass out money. Where did he get the money from? And the Vatican looked into his background for their big report after he was laicized. And they never really admitted to where he got the money. They just said it came from wealthy Catholic donors. I think those wealthy Catholic donors had the initial CIA. So in the 90s, McCarrick is going around the world with the State Department backing him. He's a liaison for religious freedom, and he's going to China, and he's going to Iran, and he's going to the Middle East, and he is spreading his influence around the world, and especially paying off bishops and cardinals in other countries. Well, in 2013, when it comes time for the conclave, when Benedict announces his resignation, well, guess who gets elected? McCarrick's friend, Cardinal Bergoglio from Argentina, gets elected. And McCarrick was right there. And there's a lot in the book about the influence operation that he ran, how he was talking to media about Bergoglio and things like that. As soon as Bergoglio comes in, he starts doing things for the Obama-Biden foreign policy programs. He does Iran nuclear deal. He reaches out to China with a secret letter to Xi Jinping that eventually becomes a betrayal of the Chinese Catholic Church. And he starts doing what he calls refugees, what we would call illegal alien immigration programs. And that's where the real evil comes from in the title.
So now you fast forward now up another 15 or so years, and I want to bring in some more things that I think are crucial to this. On January 27th of 2017, so this is President Trump's term now, President Trump was planning to appoint Catholic commentator George Weigel ambassador to Holy See. Then Cardinal McCarrick wrote to Pope Francis, stating that Weigel was, quote, very much a leader of the ultra-conservative wing of the Catholic Church in the United States and had been publicly critical of your holiness in the past. He added, quote, many of us American bishops would have great concerns about him being named such a position in which he would have an official voice in opposing your teachings. McCarrick indicated interest in discussing the topic further with the Pope, but there are no indications in their correspondence on whether he did so. So now, fast forward another year later, 2018, over a little bit over a year, McCarrick was moved from the public ministry following a credible allegation. Okay, so now how many years is this? I don't want to do math in public, but it's almost 20 years since, almost 50 years since the first allegations against this guy. So in 2018, he's finally removed from public ministry, as I say, following, quote, credible allegations that he sexually abused a minor. Now they're saying one person. There's obviously been many at this point. On July 27, 2018, McCarrick was ordered by Pope Francis to observe, quote, a life of prayer and penance and seclusion. Then the Pope accepted his resignation from the College of Cardinals. February 19th, 16th of 2019, the Holy See press office announced that McCarrick has been lasted as the Congressional Doctrine of Faith, the CDF, and Church penal process found that McCarrick guilty of solicitation, the sacrament of confession, and sins against the Sixth Commandment with minors and with adults with the aggravating factor of abuse of power. So now it's taken them 50 years to finally come to this conclusion that this man is a predator, has preyed on children for the last 50 years, but no criminal acts or no criminal violations have been brought against him still to this day. What's going on? Well,
there were some lawsuits leveled against him for his crimes, and he was found to be, because he's old, kind of unable to be tried in trial. Kind of what happened to Joe Biden with her grand jury investigation.
This is unbelievable. I want to take a quick break here. We're talking to Mike McCormick, folks. His new book, as I said, we recommend it all to you highly. Insurmountable Evil. You can get your copies today, Amazon.com, wherever you guys get your books. We recommend it to you highly. Mike's got many other great books, some that we're going to talk about today a little bit later in the show. But I want to take a quick break here. We're coming right back with Mike. Folks, stay with us.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillows only $14.98. Queens $18.98. King size only $1 more. Body pillows $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Folks, we're back with Mike McCormick. He's the author of the all-new book, An Almost Insurmountable Evil. Obama's deep state defiled the Catholic Church and executed the Wuhan Plandemic. We're going to get to all that in just a moment. Before we get to that, though, I want to turn to the Catholic Church as a whole and what's been, in my opinion, disgusting. I talk about it a lot on the show. I spoke with Father Frank Pavone, who's a friend of mine, a friend of the show, who was immediately defrocked. As soon as he came out and supported Donald Trump, the man was defrocked from the Catholic Church, never did a damn thing wrong, never been accused of anything, any wrongdoing, but because of his support for President Donald J. Trump, was defrocked from the Catholic Church. So now there's no official numbers on how many priests, people in the Catholic Church have been accused of anything. The latest numbers and estimates we have is over 6,400 priests or Catholic Church personnel have been accused of sexual abuse since the release of a breakthrough study by the Bishop Accountability Project. 6,400 is probably an understatement, number one. Number two, one is enough for me to, get my head around what the hell is going on. One victim is more than enough. Why do you think the Catholic Church in particular has allowed this to go on for so long? It's like the worst kept secret in the church. It keeps happening and happening and happening, and we get no accountability from these people who prey on victims, young children.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of infiltration of the Catholic Church by the CIA. So the CIA went into South America in something called Operation Condor, and they actually had an association with Bergoglio, who became Pope Francis back in the 70s. The Operation Condor supported the right-wing dictatorship, and it's documented that Bergoglio was doing business with the dictatorship. And that comes out in this movie, The Two Popes. There's a Hollywood movie called The Two Popes. Yeah. And basically they had to kind of whitewash his background. So the CIA's had an overbearing hand in the church, I think. I think they ran McCarrick. I think they ran Bergoglio. I think they've done a lot of other stuff. And they've certainly done, the guy who's right now second in command, who's, the Pope is languishing. The guy who put together the report on McCarrick was a guy named Cardinal Parolin. Parolin is looked at as being the successor to Pope Francis. That would be a horrific tragedy. But they are all in the same process of doing these awful deeds and covering it up and blackmailing each other. So that's been in the church far too long. I think Vice President J.D. Vance would be a good candidate to do a deep dive into what the CIA has done to the Catholic Church. He's a Catholic. He's a recent Catholic. He wasn't a Catholic during the McCarrick era. And he's also pretty recent to government work. So it's not like the deep state has a lot of, they don't have dirt on him yet. He's still early in the game. So I think he'd be a good person to try to get some stuff done.
Let me ask you this, because it seems every time it's not every time, but it seems of late, the two biggest names are McCarrick and Jeffrey Epstein, another one who's also been accused of being a CIA agent. I had Tony Schaefer, former Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer, on the show the other day, and he says there's very good evidence to believe that Jeffrey Epstein was also a CIA asset, and that's where he was being paid this large amounts of cash.
Right.
Why is it that every time in these two cases, CIA assets, it has to do with pedophilia?
Right. It's shame. I literally take a walk along the riverbank near my house, and I'm across the river from the CIA. It's being dismantled right now. I mean, USAID and the CIA dismantling by Doge and by President Trump offer a huge opportunity to get the evil out of our government. I actually got recruited to be in the CIA a long time ago out of college. It was just informal, and I didn't want to do it. I knew enough. I grew up in this neighborhood with CIA kids would come home and say, yeah, my parents, I just found out my dad was in the CIA all these years,
Right.
And they didn't know. And it's a horrible way to have to lie to your family all those years. And so I didn't want to do it. So the CIA to me isn't this big Hollywood entity. It's a government agency that's gotten too large. They've done some terrible things, and they train their fire on us. They've gone into the church. They've gone into bio warfare. They're part of what happened with the Wuhan Plandemic. This has to be pulled apart and understood. That's where we are right now. Epstein is part of it, certainly.
I want to get to the Wuhan Plandemic because you write about that in depth in your book. But before we get to that, I want to cover another issue, and it's NGOs who have been, in the news a lot lately as it pertains to illegal immigration. And this is a reporting from a fellow on Twitter named Tony Saruga. According to Forbes, Catholic Charities, one of the largest charities, the 13th largest U.S. charity last year, $4.7 billion in revenue. Catholic Charities received $1.4 billion from government support, compared to $1 billion in private donations and $2.2 billion in other income. I'd love to see where the other income came from. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, he reports, Migration and Refugee Services lists 10 federal grants for migration and refugee services on its website, including 8 from HHS, to provide services for newly arrived refugees, also known as illegal immigrants. We can say it how it is on here on this show. Strengthen refugee marriage and families, whatever that means. Unaccompanied alien children placement and reunification in the United States, more illegal immigration. A joint grant with Catholic Charities USA to provide training and assistance regarding human trafficking, also illegal immigration. A joint grant with Lutheran groups to address needs of refugee children, also illegal immigration, children and families, which was later supplemented to find home for trafficked children who were also victims of illegal immigration. Okay, so there's a little bit of a trend here. One State Department grant, resettlement services to newly arriving, calls them refugees, illegal immigrants, and one DHS grant to process, receive, and place Cuban and Haitian parolees. Interesting. Right. So he has some interesting questions that maybe you have the answers to.
Right.
How does the revenue from the NGO, the Catholic Charities, nearly quadruple since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration took over?
Well, so what happened was in 2014, they set up this. All of a sudden, all these young accompanied minors started showing up at the southern border. Kids as young as 4, but most of them are 13 to 17, mostly boys. The cartel is bringing them in. Through the summer, 60,000 kids show up. This is the beginning of they're trying to set up this cartel-affiliated migrant. You know, the Pope is trying to get out there, trying to tell everybody, oh, they're refugees, we have to welcome them. Right. This is what Trump stepped up and said, we have to put a stop to this.
Right. So
in 2014, Biden, McCarrick, McDonough get together. And out of Honduras, there was the president of Honduras, a guy named Juan Orlando Hernandez. He is smuggling cocaine in the United States by the ton. And the United States knows it. Joe Biden knows it. He comes to the White House in the summer of 2014. They know he's smuggling drugs. They don't care. They give him $500 million over the next 3 years, 2014, 2015, 2016. They set up a cartel-affiliated human trafficking, drug trafficking network, and Trump steps right in front of it in 2016. So they have to get rid of Trump. That's what the Wuhan Plandemic was. They get rid of Trump. They bring in Biden.
Now, who's they?
They would be the deep state. They is operatives, Biden operatives. They is Ron Klain, Tony Fauci, Lisa Monaco, Obama, Biden, and, you know, all the henchmen in the background, CIA, all these people. So they come in 2020 and the floodgates are open. And the Pope is out there giving them, I call it morality laundering, not money laundering, but morality laundering. He's telling everybody, oh, we have to welcome the refugees. And we see what's coming. This is our tax money going into these NGOs. It's a gigantic scam. And all they want to do is bring people in to have them vote for the Democrats for the rest of our lives.
Right.
We have no say in it. That's what it was.
How do they continue to get away with it? I mean, why does nobody come out and speak out against this?
Well, Trump did, and the election changed it. And now they're pulling the finances, the Doge finances are showing everybody what really happened. I think that basically the shift towards Trump by the working class voters was because of immigration. That was a huge issue in this last election. Yeah. That's why I call it an almost insurmountable evil. We surmounted it with the election of 2024. That's how we got ourselves out of this mess. And we've got a lot more work to do.
So you believe that the CIA and the deep state and these folks, maybe the Catholic Church, played some sort of role in the China virus?
I do, yeah. I make a pretty good case for it in the book.
Interesting. Go ahead.
So what happened was Joe Biden was in China, Beijing, in 2013 with Hunter Biden in tow.
Were you on that trip?
I was on that trip, and it was an odd trip. And so I write about it in the book from the standpoint of somebody who is telling you something that was, as a person who was there, that you didn't hear from the press. But the meeting they had went really long. And it turns out we've seen photos from Stephen Miller's group that Hunter Biden was meeting Xi Jinping. Well, they come back and they start, and Hunter Biden's has an investment group, names Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners. They start investigating a company called Metabiota. Metabiota at the time is in China. They're investigating how viruses can be dangerous if they come from bats, alongside EcoHealth Alliance and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And they're doing it under a USAID program called Predict One. Predict One goes for 5 years, from 2009 to 2014. In 2014, in the fall, Ebola hits, and they have to stop the Ebola crisis. Well, Metabiota is part of Ebola too. They're in Africa getting samples of Ebola virus were almost exactly where the Ebola outbreak happens. At the same time, let me back up just a second. Weeks after they have this trip to Beijing, the Bidens, and they come back after meeting with Xi Jinping, and they're investing in Metabiota. Metabiota starts landing all these contracts right on the doorstep of Russia to set up these biolabs. First, they go in the Republic of Georgia, then they go to Ukraine. And this is when the Ukraine Maidan uprising is happening, the winter of 2014. So Metabiota is part of this. And so USAID is funding them. And so then we fast forward to the fall of 2014, USAID gets $200 million to fund Predict 2, which is basically the money that Anthony Fauci sent to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, EcoHealth Alliance, to develop the Wuhan virus. The CIA in 2017 invested in Metabiota. So there's a lot of connections between Metabiota, Joe Biden, and one of the reasons why Vice President Pence was in charge of the Wuhan pandemic, the COVID-19 investigation group, or the response. It was because of something Joe Biden did. Joe Biden was, when this thing came out of Ebola, one of his top operatives, Ron Klain, became the Ebola czar. Out of that came this blue ribbon panel on biodefense, and their recommendation was, if there's ever a pandemic, it has to be managed out of the vice president's office. They wanted Joe Biden to be in charge of it, and he lost the they lost the election in 2016, so then it goes to Pence. And what happens remember I said there's a 5-year funding commitment, so 2019 is when the funding runs out. Trump comes in and says, we're not spending any more money on virus surveillance. We're not spending money on this stuff. We're wasting money. They didn't refund the Predict 3. Predict 2 ended in September of 2019. That's when COVID hit, just then.
Presumably, Trump had no idea what Predict 1 was, Predict 2 was. So he probably just saw it on a balance sheet and said, what the hell is this? What are we funding over here? And they went absolutely AWOL. Who again was in charge of Metabiota?
Metabiota was run by a guy named Nathan Wolfe, who was very close with the World Economic Forum.
Of course. And
so he ran it through 2017 when the CIA took it over. He kind of stepped behind the scenes and other people took it over. Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners. So Hunter gets bounced out of there. His investment ends in October of 2014. And his partners in Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners, they continue to invest in it all the way through the COVID pandemic. And they made a lot of money, but he didn't make quite as much. So it wasn't a direct, we're putting money in Hunter's pocket. Where Hunter made some money was he invested in an app that sends the payments back to people in the old country. So for the illegal immigrants, they were sending, I guess it's called remissions, not remissions.
Remittances?
Remittances, that's it. Yeah. So he did an app. So that was one of the ways he made money on the immigration outbreak.
What did you ever have any interactions with Hunter Biden?
I never met him. Nope. Never saw him, never talked to him. Joe, a fair amount. My role was in the back of the plane and about 3 degrees removed from them. So I talked to the people that talked to the people that talked directly to Joe. They just told me where to go and do what I did.
So you never had interactions with Joe Biden himself?
Not really, no.
Interesting. I want to take one more quick break here, folks. We're talking with Mike McCormick. He's the author of the all-new book, An Insurmountable Evil. Mike, when we return, you mentioned Ukraine. It's a little bit in this new book, but it's also in another book that you wrote just a few years ago, The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden. You mentioned Ukraine and the whole refugee issue and bringing them to America. Well, I've got some good news to break for you here on the Great America Show. President Trump, according to Breitbart, is reportedly fast-tracking deportations and revoking the legal status for 240,000 plus Ukrainians who fled to the U.S. in the wake of this Russia-Ukraine war. We're going to take that up. And Joe Biden's role in Ukraine and all of it. When we return, we're talking with Mike McCormick. Folks, stay with us.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Folks, we're back. We're talking with Mike McCormick. He's the author of the all-new book, An Insurmountable Evil. Get your copies today, Amazon.com, Bombardier Books, wherever you guys get your reading materials. We recommend it to you highly. Like I said, I'm about halfway through it. An excellent, excellent read. I also happened to read Mike's last book he put out, The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden. I want to turn to take a little pivot here from China and here at home in America and head to Ukraine. Right before we went to break, I had told you that President Trump is set to fast-track 240,000 Ukrainians who fled to the United States in the wake of this war between Russia and Ukraine. Your thoughts on this, Mike?
Well, I think that's good news. I mean, you know, I went to Ukraine 3 times with Joe Biden. He went 6 times. And Ukraine's a crime scene. It's a Joe Biden family crime scene. And it's a tragedy that so many people had to die there while he was president because he had to cover his crimes. And so this Zelensky thing in the Oval Office the other day, thank God for President Trump standing up and Vice President Vance, the two of them together. They had that guy dead to rights. And so one of the things that happened with the Biden crime family is they invested in this company called Metabiota. Well, Metabiota was setting up these biolabs. And one of the people that was involved...
Now, this is the same Metabiota from China and the CIA.
Right. So they're setting up these biolabs in Ukraine, and one of the people that was involved in that is Alexander Vindman. Alexander Vindman was the area officer for Ukraine for the Pentagon from 2008 to 2016. So in 2014, when Metabiota is going in there, one of their funders was the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. That's a DOD entity. Okay. They would have been in his portfolio. Well, in September of 2014, Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's wingman, goes to the embassy of United States Embassy in Ukraine. And I ask in the book, was Vindman part of the meetings they had there? Because part of the grift that the Bidens got out of that trip that Archer took was a USAID grant and other stuff was part of it, Metabiota. They didn't talk about Metabiota, and that hasn't really been investigated by the Senate or the House. I went down and was interviewed by investigators in Congress, and they never wanted to talk about what I told them about Metabiota. That's what I put in the Almost Insurmountable Evil book. So Vindman, I think, had a role in covering up for Metabiota in 2019 when he kind of was the point man for releasing this beautiful phone call complaint. And his brother was also in the National Security Council, Eugene Vindman. Eugene Vindman is now a congressman. Right. So these are deep state guys, and I think they were put in there to keep an eye on what was going on in Ukraine, if Trump came in, Trump reaches out to Zelensky as soon as he's elected in 2019. The phone call becomes public knowledge and is used by the Democrats to impeach Trump. It doesn't work. So then they have to roll out the Wuhan Plandemic to get Joe Biden in there. And that's what happened. That's, the double tragedy of the Joe Biden election was, one, Wuhan Plandemic devastates the world economy. Then he opens up the floodgates on the southern border, and he opens up the floodgates for Ukraine. And this is all part of this deep state program to enrich themselves in these activities, whether it's cartel and human trafficking or it's Ukrainian money laundering through the crimes there.
That brings up a point that I'm just thinking about now is maybe Hillary Clinton didn't run for president again in 2020, right? It was Joe Biden's job. It was Joe Biden's election to steal from any other Democrat who decided they wanted to run. Do you think, now this is just going out on the limb here, I just want to get your, obviously, as an opinion. Do you think that played a role in why Hillary Clinton, now I'm no fan of Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton's not a dumb woman, far smarter and more intellectual than Joe Biden ever was. As I say, for the audience, don't get mad at me. I'm just speaking from the fact here. Hillary Clinton is not a stupid woman. She's evil, vindictive, and maniacal, and every other adjective you want to use to describe her, but she's not dumb. So do you think that that's maybe a reason why Hillary decides not to run in 2020, because she gets a call from Obama or somebody that says, we'll level you and we'll destroy you and make sure you can never run again if you wanted to run in 2024 or 2028 or whatever?
I think what happened with the roll up to 2020, so it starts in 2019. Biden had this whole pandemic thing set up, and that became their only option. Obama and Axelrod, they didn't want Biden to go there. They were kind of poo-pooing Biden's chances as late as October of 2019. So they're like, hey, we got to get somebody else in there. And Biden, if you remember, he starts off in January. He's losing the primaries like all through January. Yeah. It wasn't until March when things really turned around. So I think what happened was the Democrats realized Trump was strong. The pandemic wasn't really working. They had to do a complete and total lockdown and go to this mail-in ballot fraud that's eventually, what I believe, turned the election in their favor. And that was the emergency cord they pulled, and it put Joe Biden in power. He just wasn't capable of being a president. And now we're seeing the results. Democratic Party is completely dissolving in front of our eyes.
They're in a full-on meltdown. Elon Musk really, it was so funny watching the other night. Funny and yet embarrassing at the same time, holding up signs that say, Elon Musk steals. Okay, first of all, Elon Musk is the world's richest man. He doesn't need to steal. I say this on every show. He's got government contracts under Joe Biden. He's got government contracts under President Trump. They're still going to be there because we have no more NASA thanks to Barack Obama. So Elon's going to be there one way or another, but Elon comes in and he decides, as any smart businessman, Mike, how do we cut the damn funding? How do we cut the bloat and fat out of this thing? How do we start saving money? And that's why Donald Trump is such a great president, because he runs this thing like it's a business. And that's how things have to be run. There's a reason why Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan is making $30 million a year, because he does a good job at running his business. He makes it extremely profitable, and he's no BS. I don't like the guy, but he knows how to run a damn business. And that's how the country has to be run, because at the end of the day, it's a business. We have a balance sheet, we have income, we have disbursements, and so on and so forth. That's how it's run. So Donald Trump comes in here now with Elon Musk and says, all right, let's look at this thing. And presumably Elon Musk goes and finds this thing, USAID, which many people didn't know about up until a few weeks ago, which was started out under JFK as a good program to help, underdeveloped nations push forward. But as all good deed doesn't go undone, the thing turns into an absolute money funneling scheme. Right. Why do you think the Marxist Dems are so caught up and so terrified of what Elon Musk is going to find?
Well, there's crime all over the place, and it's just coming out now. I mean, we're just starting to see the big, huge gaps in where money should have been going and where it wasn't going. But the crimes are everywhere. Like for instance, just recently, last Friday, sent in a criminal complaint to the U.S. Attorney of District Washington, D.C. His name's
Ed Martin.
Ed Martin, right? And so because I witnessed a crime happen on Air Force Two going into Ukraine in 2014, I saw Joe Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, came to the back and he explained to the press. They asked a question: what's the energy relief, energy assistance that Joe Biden is bringing into Ukraine right now? Well, at the time, Hunter Biden was secretly on the board of Burisma, and Joe knew it. They had meetings in his office just days before this trip. And he told Jake Sullivan, go out there and tell them this is what we're bringing for energy security. Well, two of the four things that Sullivan named directly benefited Burisma and Hunter Biden, who was making already money on it. That's malfeasance. And I reported this to the FBI 2 years ago. They did nothing. I told the congressional investigators. They didn't impeach Joe Biden. Now we have a new group in there. We've got Ed Martin. We've got, Pam Bondi at the Attorney General. Maybe we'll get some law that is actually law out of this. This is a test. It's me testing the system. I'm a witness. If I go down and testify in front of a grand jury that's investigating Ukrainian malfeasance, that becomes evidence. I'm an eyewitness to Jake Sullivan, whose wife is a congresswoman from New Hampshire. And I can also testify to what happened with the Vindmans, and one of them is a congressman from Virginia. That's evidence. And the Democrats are always screaming about they don't have any evidence. Well, guess what? Put me in there and testify, and have me testify in a road to a grand jury. That's your evidence.
Nobody seems to ring the question, why did Joe Biden go to Ukraine? Very unconventional. January 17th of 2017. That's, right. I think, extremely unconventional for a president to be taking a national security trip over to a foreign country where his son's been accused of laundering money through for the past few years. Nobody thought it was an issue. Before we wrap up here, I want to get your take. And we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow with the great Marco Polo founder and CEO Garrett Ziegler, who's got his own issues going on with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and a lawsuit that's now Hunter Biden wants to be dismissed because apparently he's run out of money. But that's a whole different story. We're going to take that up with Garrett tomorrow right here on the Great America Show. Before we wrap up, I want to get your take. So President Joe Biden goes over there January of 2017. What do you think at this point to meet with President Poroshenko? At this point, Zelensky knows about what's going on. Is he aware of the money laundering, the massive money laundering operation with Burisma, the Bidens, Archer, and all the fellows who took part in it?
You're talking about Zelensky in 2017 or Zelensky right now?
Zelensky, as soon as he wins the election.
As soon as, he knew, right? He knew. Everybody in Ukraine knew. When I went there, and this is part of the case to impeach and imprison Joe Biden. When I went there in 2015 with Joe Biden, the mayor of Kyiv was an investor with Hunter Biden in a Burisma entity. So that guy's still in there. His name's Vitaly Klitschko. Everybody in Ukraine knew. Poroshenko knew. Vitaly Klitschko knew. Vitaly Klitschko and Zelensky are sort of on different sides of the same, they're competitors. Right. But, if Zelensky goes out, Klitschko's next. Klitschko's made millions off the Biden crime family. So this is all just corruption run amok. And that's where we are.
Unbelievable. Mike, you get the last words here as we wrap up and conclude. It was great talking with you. I hope you'll come back soon to continue this conversation.
Well, I'm glad you're talking with Garrett. Garrett gave me the Hunter Biden laptop, and he's a great guy. It'll be a great conversation. There is a lot going on, and this test, I want to really, I'll keep you posted about what happens with this, me testifying in front of this grand jury. I think that's going to work.
You got my number. My phone's always on for you, my friend. I appreciate you joining us today here again, Mike. As I said, folks, the book is An Insurmountable Evil, How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Plandemic. I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Mike today as much as I did, and we'll have Mike back very, very soon to follow up with what's going on. Mike, thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us today here on the Great America Show. Please be sure to join us tomorrow for the Great America Show. As I said, our guest Garrett Ziegler. He's the president and founder of the 501c3 Marco Polo. He's the one who put together that 800-page book on the Hunter Biden laptop. Lays it out. He's joining us tomorrow because Hunter Biden is apparently dropping his lawsuit against Marco Polo and Garrett Ziegler. Hunter Biden says he's running out of money, but we think it's for a different reason. Something called discovery. Garrett joins us tomorrow here on the Great America Show, folks. You're not going to want to miss it. Please be sure to join us for that tomorrow. Also, we're now streaming on YouTube. Easier way to get us. If you don't want to go Rumble or Twitter, you can join us on YouTube. Please follow us there at the Great America Show on YouTube, the Great America Show. We're now streaming the show there each and every night as well, where you can comment, subscribe, whatever you guys want to do. We're now on YouTube, so you can join us there. We'll see you back here tomorrow, folks. Same time, same place. Until then, may God bless you. May God bless America. May God bless the great Lou Dobbs. See you tomorrow.